Well, to New York City and the arraignment of the man accused of shooting UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. 26-year-old Luigi Mangione pleaded not guilty to 11 state murder and terrorism charges. In fact, this is one of two proceedings that Mangione faces in the coming days, with the federal charges including the possibility of death. Now, Mangione will be back in court February 21st. So let's bring in CBS News correspondent Lilia Luciano. Lilia, you were in the courtroom for Mangione's arguments and arraignment. Paint a picture of what you saw.
Hey there, Reed. Good to hear you. Mangione today, as he did last Thursday in federal court, showed up not dressed in the prison jumpsuit, but dressed in khaki pants, a button-down white shirt covered by a sweater, this time burgundy. As you might have seen and are seeing in the images, he was calm. He was not looking around. He was listening intently to the attorneys who were sitting on either side. The attorneys who are representing him are a married couple. There's Mark Agnifilo, who is also representing Puff Daddy P. Diddy, and Karen Friedman Agnifilo, who today, as she did last week, was pushing back against what she has called highly unusual moves made by the federal and the state prosecutors. What she laid out today was what she said was a spectacle. She was specifically addressing the way that the city, that NYPD, and especially Mayor Eric Adams, is the way that they are treating this case. You might remember that deployment of officials, of heavily armed guards, of the mayor basically parading next to him when Mangione was brought from Pennsylvania to New York City, surrounded by the NYPD and then handed over to the FBI. What his attorney is arguing is she's saying these are political moves. She made sure to of Mayor Eric Adams' own legal cases, and saying more than anyone he understands the presumption of innocence and due process. She says that her client is not being treated fairly, that there are warring accusations between the federal charges, which I might remind you are charges that include murder and stalking, which have a maximum penalty of capital punishment, of the death penalty. And then in New York, in the state criminal court, he's facing first-degree murder, which is also a very high bar for prosecutors, for the district attorney of New York to prove. According to what he told me directly in a press conference last week, is it's rare for that district attorney's office to charge people with first-degree murder, that those are charges that are generally saved for serial killers, for people who kill police officers, and in this case, for people accused of terrorism. So those charges, first-degree murder in connection to terrorism. There's also second-degree murder and a long list. It's 11 in total on the federal side and 4 in total, I'm sorry, on the state side, and 4 in total on the federal side. What his defense is saying is, look, they are conflicting with each other. There's an odd coordination here. There was a political. They were playing ping pong, is how she described it, how she characterized it today, with my client who's not being allowed a fair trial. Inside the courtroom, just to add a little bit of what I observed, sitting behind us in the media were a group of young women who I have to assume are supporters of Luigi Mangione, given that some of them were outside. And when we walked outside first and after, there were protesters chanting in favor of Luigi Mangione, people who are using this opportunity to bring light and bring attention to unfair practices in the healthcare industry, and many of them very much in support of Mangione. He remained calm, he pleaded not guilty, and then he was taken away by court officers.
All right, fresh from the room where that hearing happened, Lilia Luciano, thank you so much. So Lilia brings up some interesting legal points there. So let's bring in CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson. Jessica, I want to actually show you what Lilia is talking about there in court. Mangione's attorney expressing concern over whether her client can get a fair trial. So let's listen to this, and then we'll talk on the other side.
And I just want to put on the record statements that the mayor made publicly about my client. Nothing saying alleged, for example. And he said, I wanted to send a strong message with the police commissioner that we're leading from the front. I'm not going to just allow him to come into our city. I wanted to look him in the eye and state, you carried out this terrorist act in my city, the city of New York that I love. and he wanted to show symbolism. Your Honor, he's not a symbol. He's somebody who is afforded the right to a fair trial. He's innocent until proven guilty. And the mayor was talking to jurors, future potential jurors that elected him. Those are the people that elected him, that he is talking to and calling this man a terrorist.
Right. So, Jessica, the crux of this is, of course, what New York Mayor Eric Adams had to say about Mangione leading up to this. Does her argument have teeth?
Well, I understand her concerns here, but that's what jury selection is about, right? To talk to jurors and say, you may have heard a lot of things and you may yourself have some views, but can you put your personal views aside and just look at the facts that are presented in a courtroom, just look at the law that applies? I think what's also important to remember, of course, is that the district attorney does not answer to the mayor. The mayor is an elected official who has the right to make statements as he sees fit. She's certainly arguing here it's going to taint the jury. But again, jury selection in this case, we always assumed if it does go to trial would be pretty vigorous. And that's how you can try to remedy her concerns, which is to talk to every individual juror, which is going to take some time, and ask if they can do their job, ask if they can be neutral.
Right, and something else that caught my ear, Jessica, Mangione's defense team requested expedited discovery in this case. Isn't this unusual for defense teams? In my experience, the defense wants to take all of the time that they can with all the discovery.
Unusual in more of a typical case, but I think part of what we see here, one, is that this is a case you and I are talking about, which almost by definition means in some ways it's not typical, but also when it comes to the not just high profile cases, but the more complex cases where, for instance, there are both federal and state charges, and the cases where you're going to see the defense use vigorous motion practice to try and exclude evidence, then it's not as unusual for the defense to say, we want to get our hands on that evidence now. I think what it frankly telegraphs to us is that, one, it is high profile, two, it is complex, and three, the defense is going to try and exclude, which would always be the case, I think, as much evidence as is possible.
Okay, so let's put that one aside, and while we have you, let's pivot to this ethics report that we started this broadcast out with on Florida Republican Matt Gaetz. That report alleges crimes committed. So why no charges, especially given the language of that report using the word statutory rape?
So I think two different reasons. One is that based on a quick look at Florida law, it looks like based on the allegations here, based on the findings of the House Ethics Committee, that the statute of limitations would have run on the type of statutory rape charges that they could bring. Two, we should all remember that a House Ethics Committee investigation is different from an investigation by criminal prosecutors. And so it's both, I think that there's a time issue here, and it's possible that prosecutors could have felt that, well, there might be evidence, maybe they couldn't prove these claims beyond a reasonable doubt. Again, I want to emphasize my words maybe and might here, but I think those are two things that we really need to look at.
Right, and it is worth noting that Matt Gaetz continues to vigorously deny and fight back against what is in that report. Jessica Levinson, thank you so much. It's always good to talk to you, my friend.